Welcome back, everybody. Today I got another episode of Redneck Gunsmithing for y'all. So what I've got here is my friend's Remington Sportsman 74 Auto. This is, from my understanding, which I haven't done a whole lot of research on this, kind of a copy or a later version of the Remington Model 742 Woodsmaster, I believe it is. I actually have one of those upstairs. Biggest differences I've noted in looking at this gun so far from that one is synthetic stock and forearm instead of a wooden one, and the bolt actually locks up with a lug system similar to like an AR-15 versus interrupted threads, kind of like, or which is what the I want to say it's a 742. I didn't bring it down. It's all the way in the back of the gun safe. Didn't feel like grabbing it out, but I'm pretty sure that's the model number. But it uses an interrupted thread pattern on the bolt to lock into the barrel here. This one's chambered in 30-06, and it actually belongs to a friend of mine. She was telling me I was over at her house doing some, trying some Flaviar whiskey samples the other night, and she was telling me that she's been having some issues with this gun. She said it was having ejection problems, and she wants to take it elk hunting. So I figured I'd grab it. She gave it to me. I brought it over. Figured I'd take a look at it for her and see what I can do to maybe fix it. Maybe it's just gummed up on the inside. Maybe it's got a bad ejector. I don't know. I haven't taken the gun apart. I haven't shot it. Haven't done anything with it yet. This is going to be kind of a multi-part video. I'll try to splice it all into one video for you guys. But for me, it's going to be a weeks-long project of trying to figure out what's going on with this gun and what I can do to fix it. Now the other issue is it could be ammo related. If it's if she needs a hotter round or something to cycle it properly, then that may you know, be something I'll have to look into and take even longer to figure out. But what we're going to do is we're going to break into this right now. We're going to take it apart, give it a good cleaning, inspect everything, and see how it's looking on the inside. Okay, so I was wrong. I lied. Sorry. The first thing we're actually going to do is I've got a couple of snap caps here. These are just A-Zoom 30-06 snap caps. You guys can see that. Hopefully it focuses. I'm going to throw a couple of these in the magazine, try to cycle them through just to see what this gun does with these. Now, granted, it's not real ammo, but I don't want to put real ammo in this in my house. If it's giving me issues with these, then I can probably look at it and maybe get a better idea of what it's doing with live ammo. And if not, then I'll just go put some live ammo through it next time I go to the range, which is gonna happen. I'm sorry. Holidays happened, Mrs. Country got sick, I'm not feeling so great, so that's why you haven't seen a whole lot of like range stuff. I'm not doing another gun video before, or at least another gun review, without some shooting footage for you guys. I'm trying to give you guys a better quality product, and with my job and life and stuff, sometimes that means that it's going to take a little longer to get some of that stuff produced, and I'm sorry, but I'm working on it, I promise. So let's throw these in. It's probably going to be a little noisy on camera, so I'm sorry for that, but I want to see what these do as far as ejection and stuff goes. So load the first one. Didn't go quite all the way into battery there, so that could mean it just needs to be cleaned a little bit. That one came out just fine, and I'm obviously, went into battery that time, I'm obviously not cycling this as hard and harshly as a round would. And that one came out just fine and locked open on the magazine. So it could be also that she might be using some ammo that's a little, cycling a little bit too fast, and the brass isn't actually having a chance to get out of the chamber, or of the port, I guess, the ejection port, before it starts to close, and she might be getting stovepipes or something like that, failures to eject. So now that we've verified that it seems to be having pretty good ejection, I don't think it's an ejector issue, we're going to go ahead and take it apart now, and we're going to dive in and figure out what we can figure out, I guess. All right, guys, I'm going to try to make this as easy for you guys to see everything as possible and get a nice, good up-close view of everything, which means that I'm going to have to kind of move the gun around a little bit and maybe do some interesting things with the camera, but I'm trying to give you guys the best view possible, so please bear with me as I'm doing all of that. Also, just so you know, I haven't taken this gun apart at all, and it's been a long time since I've taken my 742 apart, so that bolt's gonna give me problems. So I may kind of have some stupid moments here and there, just trying to figure that out. So just bear with me, all right? But let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna close the bolt so I can get the magazine out more easily. Magazine release is right here in front of the trigger guard. Push that forward, magazine comes out. If you've got the bolt locked open on the magazine, it's gonna give you some problems. So just keep that in mind. It does not lock open on anything but the actual follower here in the magazine. So it's actually pushing forward against the follower, making it very difficult to take the magazine out. So now that the bolt's clear, we know the gun's empty, but I'll check it again just to make sure. Now that the magazine's out, we're all good to go. I'm gonna go ahead and start taking this thing apart. And the way that I'm gonna do that is I'm actually gonna start up here with this screw that the sling swivel is attached to. It's just a flathead screw. Got my tools here. I'll just start taking this bad boy apart. Let me get the biggest freaking flathead screw I can grab. And the barrel makes doing this not hard, just kind of annoying. Because I mean, you guys can see the barrel's right there next to my screwdriver as I'm doing this. But I'll take that off. And eventually it'll break loose. There we go. And you have a washer that comes out with it, or a spacer, or whatever you want to call that. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop the sling there, let that sit on the floor, and then pull the hand guard up. See what we have underneath here. Hand guard not wanting to come forward. I said I'm trying to do this where you guys can see it, but there we go. It's just kind of friction fit on there pretty good. And here is the gas system of this rifle. So this is actually a direct impingement style of rifle, piston style, I guess. Basically what you have is gas taps off in this gas block, pushes back on this piece, which has these arms attached to it. These arms are what the bolt rides on. So it's kind of a, I don't know what to call that, whether it's piston or gas or direct impingement. I honestly don't know, but we'll figure it out. Now from there, I'm trying to look at this off camera where I can get a good angle before I show you guys. Pull back on this piece here, and that's just a long guide rod, but you've got, actually don't know how to get that off. Like I said, it's been a while since I've taken this gun, or one of these guns apart, guys, so bear with me. I think you gotta drive that pin out. This is not a simple gun to clean, and as you can see, it's got a lot of gunk and dirt and stuff in there. So yeah, this is one that you're gonna wanna clean, and they don't make it easy to clean. So great job, Remington, way to go. I'm gonna go ahead and cut real quick, grab a couple more tools, and then I'll come back to doing this, guys. All right, guys, I grabbed a few more tools, and I'm sitting here thinking about how exactly I want to go about this. And first of all, I want to show you guys a little bit better up close just how caked on all that carbon and crap is in there. I mean, it's a lot, you know, and this thing probably hasn't been shot, you know, maybe 500 rounds, maybe. I don't know if it's ever been cleaned. I don't know the history of this gun. I think my friend's dad gave it to her, so she probably doesn't know the full history of this gun either. But what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna put the empty magazine back in to help out with this process. And then I'm gonna lock the bolt open on the magazine just to pull this whole gas piece back. This reminds me of kind of an M1 carbine, yeah, M1 carbine, M14 style gas system, where it's literally just tapping off gas, pushing this block, which is attached to the bolt back, these arms, op rods, or whatever you want to call them. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna take this roll pin out, and to do that, and you guys may not be able to see super well as I'm doing this, and I'm trying to like maneuver about 20 or 30 different things that I shouldn't have on my table, but I do, because I'm a messy person. Get this on my bench block and not on my bits for my screwdriver. set it up, grab a punch. That guy should be big enough. And here's where the noise comes in that you guys aren't going to want to watch or listen to. Maybe I'll mute it, who knows. Just drive this pin out. And it's not wanting to move very easily. There we go, pin comes out. Now I'm gonna make sure I go ahead and capture that pin and grab it, and look at how skanky that is. Focus. You guys can see like there's carbon and rust and stuff all over it. It needs to be cleaned up. I'm gonna put this back together on camera for you guys to show you that, but then I'm gonna take it apart again because I'm a bit of a masochist apparently, and go through and clean it all up, because that could be what's actually causing some of these problems with cycling, is just how much carbon and junk is caked up on this thing. So we'll just keep on from there. Now what I'm gonna do while I've got that pin off is, oh, by the way, I meant to tell you guys, I'm actually using a little tray to hold all my parts, but if your significant others are like Mrs. Country, she always wants new pots and pans. The ones we have will start to flake on the bottom, or I don't know, she'll just get tired of them. And every year for Christmas, usually we ask for new pots and pans from her family. And rather than throw out the old ones like I did last year, I had the great idea to take the handles off of the pots, the ones with a deep lip on them, and use those as part holders. So now when I'm doing gunsmithing projects and cleaning up stuff, I can literally just throw all these parts in a pot and kind of upcycle, if you will, use that to hold onto the small pieces so I don't lose them. But also if I need to, you know, put them in a big pot of solvent or something like that to try to break up a bunch of rust or carbon or something, I've got a pot that nobody's ever going to use to cook with again that I can just pour some solvent into and it'll work out just great. So, pro tip, don't just let your wife throw away old pots. Reuse them. I'm gonna pull this little bracket off. So this bracket is right here. It was what was held onto the gas block by that pin we just took out. Let's slide that back. Let's see if there we go. Rotate it around so that it's upside down on this guide rod. And almost, make sure you don't bend anything when you're doing that. Take it off. Again, just so it's out of the way and I'm not gonna lose it. Now, I'm gonna go ahead, close her back up again. There we go. Now I'm gonna let it go gently this time because the stuff at the end isn't attached. But from here, instead of letting this block go back over, I'm gonna take the magazine out too. Letting that block go over the gas tube like it wants to. Gas tube's right here at the bottom. You guys can see that. I'm actually gonna see if I can pull it up above that, and I may not be able to. Like I said, been a while since I've taken this apart, and it's not wanting to go forward from there, so I am gonna have to let it go over that gas tube. But that's okay, because there should be a way to get this thing. I know for a fact there's a way to get it past. I've done it before, I just don't remember how I did it. All right, so I'll be honest with you guys. Because this isn't my gun, I don't want to just fiddle fart around with it and, you know, try this and that to try to get it apart and ended up breaking it, because again, it's my friend's gun, it's a family gun, it's a gun she wants to take elk hunting, and I want to make sure I don't mess anything up. So I actually just went and watched a little bit of a YouTube video on how to do this, how to take the gun apart, which I'm sure is exactly why you guys are watching this video. But that aside, it's shown me that my first idea was actually correct. Put the magazine back in, lock the bolt open, and then from there, I should be able to wiggle this up enough. Yep, and that guide rod is free. I just wasn't using enough force earlier, because again, I'm trying to be ginger with a gun that doesn't belong to me. Here's our guide rod. Let's take a look at this real quick. It is hollow all the way through. I can point it right at the camera lens and show you guys, which, there we go. So it's hollow, it's just a steel tube, also pretty caked in carbon and stuff. We'll clean that up later. Now, that spring, if you guys will look, and if it can get the sling caught on stuff, see how that spring is starting to like bunch up and everything? That thing is going to go flying if I'm not really careful. So again, I'm going to somehow, with my extra third hand that God gave me, slowly close this thing. And there we go. There it went. That spring just came out on me, which is fine. Once I get the guide rod back in, won't be a problem anymore. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and just take the spring out so it doesn't get messed up. And there we go. It's not all kinked up and ruined and stuff, so that's good. Now I can freely move this gas system back and forth, which is great. Also, if you notice, this block pivots. There's a pin going through here, holding it to the bars. Don't want to mess with that at all. But what I do want to do is also want to be really careful of this gas port, not bend it or mess up the hole on the end or anything. So just to protect it for now, I'm going to throw that back over it. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and just take this trigger pack out, because I feel like, I mean, if you look at the bottom of the receiver, you can see where it's open for the magazine. If I take this whole trigger assembly out, the entire bottom of the receiver is just open, and I can get in there and see if there's a way to disconnect the bolt from the assembly and all those good things. But I need to take the trigger out first. So take our punch. We're actually going to take a little bit of a smaller punch for that front pin. And it's got these, I'll show you the pins here. You're going to take this pin out and this pin out. Just drive them across carefully, especially because this is on the receiver, and if your punch decides to go off to the side, you could scratch the hell out of it. I'm actually going to start out this process with my roll pin punch that has the point on the end of it. And there's a little divot, if you guys saw, in each of these pins. So that point should sit in that pin pretty well to get it so it's not flush anymore. I don't have to worry about the punch skipping off and scratching the receiver. Just enough to get those started. Now, I'll take my smaller punch. This is a 1/8 millimeter punch, if anybody's wondering. I don't really get into that. I just kind of look at what looks like the right size and use that. Tap that through. Came out nice and easy. Didn't have to beat on it real hard or anything like that. Put our pin in our parts tray and move our receiver on the block. I'm going to use the bigger punch for this one because this is a bigger pin. So you do have different size pins that you will need to put back in the right holes, but if you try the smaller one first, you'll know, because if the smaller one just falls right through the big hole, then you know. Now this one looks like it's got a couple of cutouts on the sides of the pin that hold on to various different things. So I can't just pull it out the other side. I have to finish tapping it through. There we go. And capture that pin as well. Go ahead and drop it in our tray. And then from there, now the hammer's already cocked on this. That's important. A lot of times with these guns, if the hammer's not cocked, stuff can go flying. So hammer's cocked. The safety is actually on this gun as well. I don't know if that matters or not, but I'm gonna leave it on there just in case. Grab the trigger guard and work it upwards gently. You don't have to manhandle it until everything decides to hang up on you. And then just work it out. One big thing I will tell you guys, like one of the most important lessons I can tell you, and I know this is funny because I'm talking with my hands in my chest and not my face. Do not manhandle parts on guns. Do not try to force anything. Unless you are a trained, competent gunsmith that's done this a million times and you know the stuff you have to force, don't force it. You can end up breaking something. Light taps with the hammer, light pulls on parts. What was hanging up on me there actually was the sides of the front of the trigger pack were hanging up a little bit in the bottom of this cutout. I don't know if you guys can see it very well or not, but the cutout actually gets wider up here towards the front. I was hanging up on the narrow part, so as I moved the trigger pack forward just a little bit, it came out no problem, but it was hanging up on me until I did that. So take a second, look at your workpiece, all the dimensions, what you're trying to do, and see if there's something that makes sense. Try a few different things, move it around, jiggle it, but don't force it. Don't yank it out of there. You could damage the part. You could damage the trigger pack, which could be difficult or impossible to replace depending on what gun you're looking at and how long ago it was made. Or you could damage the receiver and now the entire firearm itself is just trashed. Let's take a look at this trigger pack. Doesn't look to me like it's ever been cleaned, which, considering how much of a pain in the butt taking this gun apart can be, I'm not surprised. I wouldn't clean it very often either. Looks like a fairly standard single action style trigger pack. We've got our bar here that holds the hammer. This is the hammer. We've got our trigger. When I pull, now you don't want to just pull the trigger and let the hammer go flying. Put my thumb in front of it to hold it in place. Slowly let it forward. There we go. We got that. And then we've got a disconnector that will actually allow the hammer to be recocked once the bolt comes back. Parts over here. I don't know exactly how all this works. I could take it apart and reverse engineer it and figure it out, but honestly, I don't really want to. There's little springs and pins and all kinds of nonsense in here that can go flying across the room, and I don't want to lose it, and yeah, I'm not messing with that. So just gonna put the safety back on, put that in our parts tray, and then go from there and see what we can do to get our bolt out. Okay, so the bolt, let's see if I can show you guys this. The bolt is riding on those op rods that I showed you. Let's see if we can get a picture of that. And it's just going back and forth, and you see the lugs there on the bolt. So as the bolt goes into battery, you can watch it, it'll turn as it, if I line up the gas tube with that block on the front, it will turn as it goes into battery. I'm still not lining that gas tube up. There we go. See how the bolt's turning and locking into the back of the barrel? So, and then there's our firing pin sticking out the very back right there. So getting this out could potentially be interesting. I see that there's a pin that I need. Aha, I remember this part from before. There's a pin that I need to drive out to take the bolt handle off, the operating handle. And it's supposed to come through right there. There it is. So if you look, I'm just gonna close this to make it easier to show you guys. If you look at the bolt, there is a plastic dust cover here on the outside. If I open it a little bit, you can see me move it around with my finger. I mean, it's just kind of sitting there, that thing. That's plastic. But if you look at it, at the top there, right behind the bolt handle, there's a little U-shaped cutout. If I can get my finger, kind of like that. That has to go over, where is that pin? Right there, that little spot. You may or may not be able to see it. There's a tiny little pin right behind the bolt handle there. That little pin is what's actually holding the bolt handle in place. So now that I've gotten the dust cover in the right spot, I'm going to take my tiny little punch and drive that through. I'm going to have to do it without impacting the scope in any way. So I'll move it forward a little bit. I know you guys aren't going to be able to see this, I'm sorry, but take my word for it. There's a pin that I'm driving out very carefully because it's tiny. Just light taps. All right, guys, that pin did actually drive out from the top, not the bottom. Here it is, by the way. I mean, like, itty bitty guy, which is why I like to use trays for my parts. I just had to keep gradually increasing how hard I was hitting it with the hammer. Again, like I said, you don't want to just like go ham on stuff, but at the same time, if it ain't moving from either direction, you got to just, you know, slowly increase that pressure till you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm not comfortable doing this anymore. Then find a gunsmith. But from there, now that we've gotten that pin out, what we can do is we can move that dust cover so that that little U shape is right there over the bolt handle, like so. And I'll actually be able to just pull the bolt handle straight out of the bolt. And of course, doing this, trying to watch it on screen, difficult, but I can pull it out. For whatever reason, it's hanging up on the dust cover, and I don't know why. Sorry, also, if you guys are getting any kind of microphone noise, I apologize. I might be rubbing this thing up against the microphone. There we go. Pulls right out. Sorry about that. All right, guys, sorry. I had to go grab another beer because I just remembered my least favorite part about this gun design and taking it apart. You need a wrench. This is so dumb. If you're watching this and you're thinking about designing a gun, please, for the love of God and all that's holy, don't do something like this. This is how you have to take the gun apart. Can't get the bolt out or anything till you do this. Wrench. See this nut looking thing here on the front? Yeah, you got to take that whole thing off, which is going to be fantastic. And I'm trying to find a way to do this because I don't want to put a lot of downward pressure on the scope. And of course, the trigger bars get in the way, or not trigger bars, the operating bars kind of get in the way, make this even more fun. So, see if I can grab onto it and turn it here. I'm gonna have to do this on the edge of the table. I'm sorry, guys. I really wanted you to be able to see all of this, but I can't just bear down on the scope like that. Suffice to say, I'm taking this off. There's probably gonna be a lot of cussing and gnashing of teeth, and I don't want to put you guys through that, so I'll be back once I get it loosened up. All right, it only took a second or two to get it loosened up. And if you guys are having trouble when you're doing this, trying to figure out which way you want to do it, just imagine that it's the top of a Coke, and you're gonna grab this like the top of a Coke bottle, and you're gonna turn it. That's the way you want to turn it. So now that I've got loosened up, go ahead and keep on loosening it for you guys. Like I said, the trigger bar definitely gets in the way. Or I keep calling it a trigger bar. The op rods keep getting in the way. There we go. Just keep on working at it until it wants to come off. And just remember, you're gonna have to put this thing back on too. Yeah, all right. I think I can do it with finger pressure now, yep. All right, something else that's important to pay attention to about this. These front edges, if I can get the camera to focus, these front edges here are kind of beveled and chamfered. And the back actually has this ring on it. So this is the part that goes towards the receiver. All right, from there, get a little metal clip that comes off. It's just like spring steel. And now our barrel, you have to make sure that the bolt is rearward so that the barrel can actually come off the front like so. Then once you get the barrel off, you take and turn it 90 degrees from the gun, and it'll come out of your action bars and you won't bend them up. See how it's shaped there? That's why you have to turn it, because your action bars or your op rods are right here. So that thing's pretty filthy. We'll let's take a look down the bore there. Well, the barrel's not super filthy. It's got good rifling in it. All right, I'll set that aside. And now, if you look, you can actually see the factory original red Loctite on there. So looks like this one might have been taken off before, because I didn't have to like heat it up or anything to get it off. but still, it's not fun. Now I can pull this whole assembly out the front like that. That little plastic piece that just fell off is that dust cover I was telling you about before. It sits alongside the barrel like this. And trust me, getting this back in there in the right spot is a pain. That's going to be fun. Now we can take our receiver finally and pretty much just set it aside. We don't need it now. See how this piece swivels around like I was mentioning earlier? It's pretty easy to put back together correctly though. It's not split in the middle. You want the trough on top under the barrel, the part on front with the 2 holes towards the front, and the part in back with just the 1 big hole towards the back. Getting our bolt out. This is going to be fun. Looks like there's another pin holding our bolt in place. Yep, it's camming along that track. There's a little pin here. The bolt, you see the track cut into the bolt that it just follows. Let's see how we're going to get that out. Also, thing is filthy. So we're going to definitely have to clean that up a little bit. See if I can get the camera to focus. Don't want to turn the brightness. Somehow I was messing with the brightness. That's fun. There we go. Maybe you guys can see it a little better. It's pretty filthy. Anyway. All right. I can't drive that pin out because it doesn't go all the way through anywhere. Actually, I could be wrong about that. I need my light. Nope. Does not go all the way through. But the bolt definitely comes out. And this is actually a problem with the design that I have. The bolt comes out, but it's possible to put the bolt back in backwards. So if you do that, it won't go into battery and it won't fire and it can be all sorts of frustrating. But if you do that, you'll know you put it in backwards and that's why it's not going into battery and giving you all sorts of problems. Firing pin looks like it's moving freely, so that's good. Let's see how we get this bolt out. All right, boys and girls, looks like we're pretty close to the home stretch. I'm gonna take this dental pick set that I got on Amazon. Dental picks are great for cleaning guns and all sorts of stuff. I'm gonna take a dental pick with a curve to it, like this one. And in this cam track that you see on the bolt, you see the pin there, I'm gonna stick this pick in that cam track and get in there and try to push that bolt out, or that pin out. It's not a bolt, it's a pin. But voila. So all I did, take the hook into, this is really difficult to do on camera, into the cam track, make sure I get it down behind that pin and rotate it. That's why I use the one with the curvy hooky thing on the end of it. Pushes the pin out enough that I can grab it. This little guy right here, that's all it is. And throw it in my parts tray. Now, got my firing pin back here in the back that's sticking and not wanting to come out, but the bolt will spin freely. So, gotta make sure you put that back together right. There's a pin, there's gotta be a pin somewhere holding this firing pin in place. But I don't know where that pin would be. See if I can put it in and rotate it any direction. Nope. All right, found what was giving us our trouble with the firing pin. There is a little cross pin that blends in that I'm trying to show you guys right there. If you can see that, I'll point at it with the pick. It's right here. This little guy right here. So I have to drive that out, carefully of course, in order to get the firing pin out so I can get the bolt out. And it looks like it might be a tapered pin. So I'm going to go from the side that looks like it's smaller Set up my punch. You have to hold the bolt in place too because it wants to spin on you. This is a frustrating gun to field strip. That's all this is field strip. Not doing any kind of significant takedown or anything. I'm just field stripping the gun. That ain't working either. Getting this pin out is going to be annoying. But it will come out, I promise you. This time I'll actually just sit here and let you guys watch it. If you want to fast forward, feel free, because I'll be honest with you, I kind of wish I could fast forward through this part. I do not like this design, if you can't tell. And I own one, so. I just realized I'm doing this and probably jarring the camera a little bit. So if that's the case, because it's sitting on a little tripod on the table, if I'm jarring the camera, I'm sorry, guys. There we go. Broke it loose. Now you're going to want to be careful with this, because as soon as you get this little tiny pin out, I'll show you guys where the pin's sitting right now. As soon as that pin comes out, that firing pin is under spring pressure and it's going to want to go flying across the room. So be very careful about that. Everything's kind of sliding all over the place on me. I'm actually going to take a pair of pliers and pull that out. Or actually, I'll just use a wrench because my pliers are across the room and I'm being lazy. Let's see if I can grab onto it with this adjustable wrench here. And making sure not to let that firing pin go flying. Man, it's really stuck in there, huh? All right. There we go. All right, so the pin came out. Camera doesn't really want to focus up close. Put that in our parts tray, and now I'm using my punch as a slave pin to keep the firing pin in. As soon as I take this punch out, firing pin comes out, bolt comes out the front, and our spring stayed in the bolt. That's it. That's taking this gun apart. All we did. So what I might actually do is make this into a separate video about taking the gun apart, and then make a video about putting it back together. We're going to continue on now looking at a few other things that might be causing this problem, but I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of willing to bet that all this gunk and carbon buildup that is all over this gun is causing some of these issues. So I think if we just get it cleaned up, take it out to the range, it should be working just fine. But I'm gonna go ahead and move on to what else would I look for to solve an ejection problem in this gun. Okay, now that we've got this apart, I'm gonna look at the spring tension on this ejector here. Now it seemed to be working just fine with our snap caps that we used earlier, but just wanna check it. This little notch right here, this little pin looking thing, that's our ejector. So what's happening here, if I can find one of those snap caps, is rounds getting loaded in. You can see our extractor right here, maybe, if I can focus it. Our extractor lip is right there. It's actually milled in to the side of the bolt, unlike an AR extractor, which is a separate piece. But the round is getting pulled out of the barrel like this, and as it gets pulled out, that little detent I just showed you, the ejector, is actually pushing it sideways. And once it gets to the opening, aka the ejection port, it flings it out just like that. Spring tension on this one's pretty good as I'm pushing in it with a punch. I mean, it's stiff for sure. I mean, there's no denying the spring behind that ejector is strong. The spring is strong with this one. A little Star Wars reference for you. So I don't think that's the problem. I honestly think that the culprits for this gun are either going to be the caking and carbon and dirt and grit and stuff that's all up in it, or the ammo that's being used. May need to use a heavier pill or a lighter pill, depending on you know, which way it goes. If it's not ejecting at all, then obviously it's not giving enough system or enough power in the gas system to slam the action all the way back enough for the round to be ejected, or the brass in this case. If it's coming back and getting stovepipes, then it's probably coming back too fast, and that spring is sending it back forward very quickly before the brass has a chance to get out. You know, equal and opposite reactions and all that stuff. So that's one of the things that I'll play around with. I've got a couple of different loadings right now for 30-06. Not a lot. Most of what I have is actually M1 Garand stuff, 150 grain M2 ball spec ammo. But I'll play around with this at the range after I get it cleaned up and put back together. She did give me a few rounds of the ammo she's been trying, so I'm going to try those first, and if they run just fine, I'll still probably try a different load or two just to see, and then I'll go from there. Hopefully just getting this thing cleaned up, which is what I'm about to work on, is going to solve all our problems with this gun. All right, so I went ahead and cleaned the gun off camera, and this is just the Q-tips and the pipe cleaner that I used, like the rag and just the carbon that I scraped off of places, and it was freaking filthy. It was bad. But I spared you guys from having to watch that. Now we're going to talk about actually putting the gun back together. All right, so what we're going to do to start is actually not use this stuff. We're going to grab our op rod here. We're going to need, move our little parts tray over here so I can grab what I need. Our firing pin spring, bolt, our bolt pin, which looks much like the pin that actually holds in, I can maybe show you guys this, looks a lot like the pin that holds our charging handle in the bolt. Very similar in diameter, but the way you can tell is the one that's intended for the firing pin is actually ground on the side. If it'll maybe focus, maybe. It's ground there. You can see how it's shiny so that it sits flush. We need those pieces to get started, if I can use my words properly. And we're also going to need our other little bolt camming pin here. And I think that's it. All right, now that we've gotten all of our parts together, we're actually going to be taking our bolt, putting it into our op rod here. And at this point, carrier, op rod, whatever. At this point, I don't really care how you orient the bolt. All right, what you're gonna do as far as like ejector and all that stuff, what you're gonna do is you're actually gonna orient it so that the stem on the back here has the hole for, if I can get it on camera, for the firing pin, retaining pin, where you can see all the way through it. Once you get that lined up, here's where the real fun's gonna be. And I don't recommend actually taking this firing pin out unless you have to. I just wanted to give this thing a nice deep clean. Take our firing pin spring here, shove it in the back of the bolt, firing pin in the back of the bolt. And what you're gonna do is, if you look at your firing pin here, you've got that milled out flat spot. That part is gonna go, if you look at your holes for your firing pin, retaining pin, they're actually offset. They're not centered on the bolt stem at the back, if that makes any sense. So that hole isn't going straight through the middle like an axis. It's actually kind of pulled up and it only goes through maybe the top third or so. You're going to line that flat spot on your firing pin up with that retaining pin hole. You're going to have to hold it forward and in place while you hold your bolt in the right orientation, while you drive that pin through. And that's going to be a little bit of a nightmare. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started on camera for you guys, and then I'm going to turn it off because you don't want to hear all the cussing that's going to come from this process. Let's just say it's not going to be fun. So I've got it started in there now. You guys can see the pin sticking out, and it's actually in far enough that it's retaining the firing pin already, which is good. So I'm just going to drive it all the way through now, and I'll be right back. All right, so a combination of a bench block, hammer, a couple punches, and vice grips got that pin in place. Holy crap. I do not like this design of this gun, if I haven't made that clear yet. Now what I'm going to do, now that I've got my firing pin retained in there, and I've got my bolt in place, and my bolt is not coming forward. Bolt's not coming forward because I actually did too good a job on that firing pin, retaining pin. There we go. So firing pin, retaining pin is preventing the bolt from coming forward, which is not what you want. So what I'm actually going to have to do is I'm going to have to hand fit that pin, which it's very clear to me by the grind marks on the back of the bolt stem. That's exactly what they did from the factory. So I'm just going to take a file and very carefully hand file the end of that pin until it's flush with the outside of that bolt stem to allow me to move the bolt freely like I need to. And I got to do it just in one spot. So I'll start working on that real quick. Boom, didn't even take that long. Now the bolt stem moves freely all the way through, which is good. Now I have to figure out where I need to put the bolt in what orientation. It is possible to put this thing together backwards, and you don't want to do that. So knowing that this is the position the bolt's going to be in when I'm shooting the rifle with the back of it towards me, my ejector is going to be pushing the brass this way out the ejection port. So I know that I'm going to want, in the fully extended position, I'm going to want that ejector in about that position. And it's also going to be pivoting on the extractor there. So it's going to push, it's going to pivot on the extractor. I will show you guys a demonstration so you can actually figure this out for yourselves. You can take a piece of brass or something and do this. Hook it in the, make sure the bolt is fully extended as it would be when the gun is cycling backwards. Hook a piece of brass or a snap cap into the extractor on the side and push against the ejector. And if it looks like it's about to try to push it towards the ejection port, which it is, if you guys can see that angle, you're good to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and line up that cam track here that actually curves down with the pinhole right there. Take our little detent pin, our cam pin, drop it in that hole and just push it in to the cam track. Now, if you did put this together backwards and you get it all the way put back together and realize, oh crap, I put it together backwards, you can just take it apart and take that little pin out, switch it around. What they should have done is made that track way smaller than the track on the other side where the other cam pin, which is also your charging handle, runs. If they had done that, you couldn't put this pin on this side in the wrong spot. You couldn't put the bolt in backwards and you couldn't have those issues, but they didn't do that. Now we've got this assembly put together. We're gonna set it aside for a second and we're gonna move on to putting the barrel back on the gun or on the receiver. All right guys, so first things first, we've got the back of the barrel here, the chamber end, you can tell because it's way bigger, and we've got this little T-shaped block at the bottom. We're gonna take the assembly, the recoil assembly we just put back together, and turn it perpendicular to the barrel, dropping that little T in, rotating it 90 degrees, and then sending it forward so that the hole in the front of the gas system is actually around the gas port. We're actually gonna also line up our bolt here at the back with the back of the barrel, trying to do this where you guys can see it. Line it up, make sure the locking lugs are all good. Like so. Lock the barrel into place, or the bolt into place with the barrel as we close everything up. So now everything's good, and I can actually tell you from here, it looks like everything is locked up and in battery just fine. So we should not have put that bolt in the wrong way, which is good. Now that we've got this done, we can take our receiver and just slide everything in from the front of the receiver like so, all the way back in. And of course it's going to hang up on me in like 5 different spots until it clicks in. And it's not actually really a click, it's just that's as far in as it'll go. From there, this is the part that I hated the most in the last video, and then I'm going to hate the most in this video. It's this stupid little barrel nut. Before we can do anything with that though, we're going to need this little spring steel clippy piece right here. This is actually going to go around that bolt stem. You guys can see that right there. I'll move it forward so you can see a little bit better. That bolt stem in the front. And these little wings on the sides are going to come up, excuse me, in these cutouts on the bottom of that T of the barrel. I know this isn't making a lot of sense, but it sits kind of like this right here. If you guys can see, it just fell off the front a little bit. Shove it back on, it's super easy. From there, we're going to take our bolt, again, with this thinner extended part on the back, so towards the receiver. Throw it on there and just start finger tightening it, so to speak. And as I get it started, start rotating it in there. Let's see if I can show you guys a little bit better. You can't see a damn thing because of my hands, but I'm sure you all know how to finger tighten a nut, again, so to speak. Make sure you keep your barrel pushed back because that's just going to make this process easier. And once it gets a little bit difficult to tighten with your fingers, that's where this tool that should not have to be used for field strip of any firearm ever comes into play. Go ahead and just tighten it up with this guy. And because of the action bars here, you can't really get much of a rotation, nor can you get the wrench all the way on the nut. It's quite frustrating. This is a dumb design. And once you get to about this point, you know, where it starts to be really tight, this is where I end up using the old phallic method. Put the gun between my legs and clamp onto it as I tighten up this nut, using my thighs to keep it from rotating on me, or to keep the gun from rotating. I want the nut to rotate. Good old phallic method. My big black 30-06. All right, once you've gotten that nut very, very tight back on there, and I mean very tight, keep in mind the amount of pressure that's going through this system. It's a 30-06. I mean, there's a lot of energy there. You don't want this being loose and shaking, not to mention what it would do to your accuracy. After that point, what you can do is go ahead, bring your, I don't know, your bolt and everything all the way back. I still don't know what to call this piece. I'm a piston, I guess? I don't know. Take this little silver guide rod tube from the front, and there's a large hole in the front of that piston, we'll call it. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but it's there. Same hole you took it out of. Just gonna send it through that hole all the way back and get it in place, and then pull your bolt back forward, and it actually lines up inside that nut. It goes on top of the stem of the bolt that we just attached that nut to. Now that's in place, what we're gonna have to do is actually bring it up and forward. Now, I know this seems dumb and I'm like changing my mind on what I'm saying, but I promise you there's a reason here. This mamma jamma has to go in there, your recoil spring. So you're gonna take your spring, put it on that guide rod, and start putting it up inside this piston. And as you do that, you can shove your guide rod a little bit further back and shove a little bit more spring onto that guide rod, and it's gonna come undone on you, and it's a three-handed operation, and you're not gonna be happy about this because I'm not happy about it right now. But as you get it more and more onto that guide rod, what you're going to end up seeing after it does that on you 5 or 6 or 10 times, what you're going to end up having happen is it's going to want to line up just right with that bolt that we just talked about a second ago. If I mentioned that I hate the design of this gun, anything that is this much of a pain in the ass to field strip so you can clean it and then put it back together, whoever had this idea was on drugs. And then of course by the time you get close, your hand starts to get tired and you can't keep going. That's what she said. Yeah, I really hate this gun. And I have one just like it, so friend whose name shall remain anonymous who wanted me to take a look at this gun, don't worry about it. It's not your fault. It's the people that designed it. I blame them for all the evil that has befallen me this evening. But it's okay because you gave me free whiskey, so worth it. All right, now that I've gotten the spring on top of that bolt, it's sitting right in there, it's inside that nut. I'm just gonna slowly push the recoil guide rod, back a little bit. Try to keep the spring on that guide rod and tensed up and not snaky like it is right now. This punch. See if I can use this punch to try to keep it lined up on the guide rod here. Yeah, this isn't gonna work. I'm gonna have to re-tension it. I'm telling you, this is a dumb design. All right. I'm gonna keep finagling with this off camera because you guys really are gonna start hearing a lot of cussing here in a second if I don't. Okay guys, got that back together. So now we have our guide rod going through the piston up into the nut here. We have our spring captured between that nut and the wall that's inside this piston here. Next step, since we've got our entire gas system put back together for the most part, not completely yet, is we're gonna put in this little cup here. Now, or I don't know what, it's not a cup, it's a little plate, it's a bracket of some kind. Now I could have put this on before, but honestly, I forgot that this was even in the box, so that's okay. If you look at it here, where the larger hole is on top and these arms are on bottom, that's how it would be if you invert the gun. That's how it's gonna sit, all right? So that larger hole is actually, I don't want that guide rod coming out like it wants to, because it was enough of a bear to get in there in the first place. There we go. Stay. All right. Pull back on this. Take our guide rod. Make sure that we get all this lined up just right. Get that plate set between the guide rod. There we go. It's in there. We're good. Just got to get the guide rod in the hole that it's supposed to be in. Try something. I'm actually going to take it and turn the piece the wrong way. I will try to do this on camera for you guys. Turn this piece the wrong way. This is because I forgot to put it in there when I was supposed to. But I'm going to put it on the guide rod the way it's supposed to be. There we go. That was easier. Now I'm going to bring it back past the gas port there, let it fall, rotate around, and it goes around the gas port like so, and just sits there. Now we have our roll pin, which is this guy. It's got the hole going all the way through the middle of it. That roll pin is actually what holds that bracket onto the gas block. So I'm going to get the roll pin just started a little bit. Give it a little tappy tap tap. Take our roll pin punch, wherever that went, and send it all the way through. And this particular pin actually sticks out on both sides, so you just kind of want it evenly sticking out like that. It's not going to be flush with anything, so you don't have to worry about that. Now that we've got those pieces put together, everything looks good there. I'm realizing that I forgot this stupid little dust cover, but I'm hoping that I can get that put in. See, I told you there would be dumb moments. Oh yeah, no, I should be able to get that. Yeah, all right, cool. You just pull your bolt down. There is a track in there. I can't do this on camera, I apologize. I'll try to show you guys something, but my hands are gonna end up getting in the way. There's a track in there that your dust cover rides in, so if you forget to throw this thing in when you're putting the bolt back in, I wouldn't worry too much about it, because you can maybe get it in there behind the bolt like so. And it is plastic after all, so it's malleable, which is nice. There we go. Yep. Come in from the outside, makes it easier. Let the bolt forward most of the way, and then shove the back end in there. Get that front end put in like so. And it's not sitting in the track right now, but that's okay. I can fix that too. Probably not going to put this in there at all. We'll see. Now, this dust cover doesn't have to be there to make the gun work right. It doesn't serve a mechanical purpose as far as that goes. What this does do, though, is help keep some dirt and debris out of the action, just to help it, because it is semi-automatic, help it run a bit more smoothly. And I gotta tell you guys, I am not taking this gun apart again to put it back in there. I'm just not doing it. Not gonna do it. Not happening. No. This thing is a nightmare to disassemble and reassemble because it hates everything good and holy in the world. That should be put back together. Although it's not all the way in there like I want to see it be. There we go. All right. Yeah. All right, cool. Got it back in there. So you can do it that way. You just got to fiddle fart around with it until it sits in there and moves back and forth with the bolt. You can do it from the outside after you've put it all together if you screw up like some people. All right. Now, from this point, I'm going to take my little cam pin, aka charging handle, throw it in there. It's pretty self-explanatory. The side that has the lines on the front of it that's curved like a spoon, it goes towards the front. Just line it up, put it in that hole. Do. Make sure that you line it up inside your dust cover as well, and boom, there we go. Now, I'll take my charging handle retaining pin, which is the one that looks just like the firing pin retaining pin. Put it in and get it started. See if I can get it started from the top. It's actually going to be way easier, I think, to do this from the bottom, even though I have to hold the bolt in a certain position to get it all the way through just because of the dust cover. But I think doing this from the bottom is going to be easier for a lot of reasons, due in no small part to the fact that I think it's actually a tapered pin. I could be wrong about that. If I can keep the rifle in one position. This would be easier if I had a vise, but maybe one of these days. I'm actually going to use the vise grips here to grab onto the pin just to get it in the little hole and get it started. Find that hole in there. You can see it pretty easily underneath the bolt. And of course, the pin fell out of the vise grips. We'll try that again. I'm not going to clamp down all the way with the vice grips. Again, I could use a pair of pliers for this. That would probably be the more appropriate tool, but this works. So now that I've got it in there, I'm going to take a oversized punch and start working it through. Again, make sure before you start banging hard on this, so to speak, that your charging handle is still in place and you're not dicking that up as you're doing this. Just tap it in. Tap it in, just a little tappy, tap, tap, tap. Okay, now that I've got it almost all the way in place, I'm going to take another punch. See if I can show you guys where this is going now that it's not going to fall out on me. So if I use my light, show you up in there, it may be a little too bright. That's probably a little too bright. There is, you can see it actually, it's right there, that silver piece all the way over. Like, let's see if I can do this. Hold the light, angle it, get a pointer, use the camera to look at what I'm doing. There, right there, that pin. That is what I'm driving in. That's going to hold in this charging handle. So I'm just going to finish driving that in with a standard, or not standard, but I guess a correctly sized punch. Making sure that I check it every now and then, because they'll bounce off the pin and you won't realize it. And you're then just driving a punch into the bottom of your bolt carrier, and that's no fun. you also want to check and make sure you're not going too far and driving the pin out the top, because that's not going to help anybody either. These things love to slide off. Like so. Now, I have that pin flush in there and it should be good to go. Dust cover still moves freely. I can see the pin from the top where the bolt carrier is, so that's good. Everything is moving smoothly as it's supposed to, which is nice. Now, I'll go ahead and put my trigger assembly back in. It's pretty simple. I'm going to get it lined up in the slots. And again, just finagle it, just work around in there. Make sure, of course, that this little bar, I don't know exactly what that's called, sorry, is actually inside the receiver. I do know that. All your parts are in place. Everything goes in. And then once you've gotten your trigger group lined up inside the little cutout that is very clearly intended for the trigger group, it'll look something like so-ish. That little bar that I just showed you, it's up in there. There's a little shelf, and I'll see if I can show this. Again, it's one of those three-handed prospects. There's a little shelf in there. You guys can kind of see it angling upwards. That little silver arm is supposed to ride on that shelf. So I have to dig down in here, and I'll show you what it looks like after I get it in place. Move the arm so that it rides where it's supposed to, and the gun actually functions. If you don't do that, I don't remember exactly what it does, but I do know from my other gun, there we go, my gun that's actually like this, that it won't function correctly. All right, so now that I've got it in place, I'll show you guys here. Turn on light. There we go. There is a metal cut in the receiver. Again, 3 hands. I am so impressive today. This is such a great, well-made, well-put together video. This little silver bar here rides right up against this little cut in the receiver right here. It's cut at the same angle as this. I'll actually take a picture of this and show you guys what it looks like once I finish putting it back together, so you can see better than what I'm able to show you on video. After I get the trigger group in place, and take my 2 trigger pins, these guys, and of course one of them is bigger than the other, so at least they understood that concept with something, although in this case I'm not really sure it would matter if you had 2 different size trigger pins, because one of them doesn't necessarily need to go in one place or the other. They don't do anything different, just one of them is a different size. I'm going to put them in to the trigger group like so. Just little taps, nothing crazy. And then once it gets close to the receiver, I'll use my roll pin punch again just to flush them up. If you go too far to one side or the other, that's fine. You can just flip it over and give them a little tap, flush them up. Nothing crazy going on there. Now we can actually do a function check. So safety on, nothing. Safety off, get a bang, hold the trigger, cycle it, I get a reset, I get a bang. So perfect. Rifle is put back together with the exception of the handguard, which is pretty damn simple. Throw it over the gas system like so. Make sure you slide it all the way back until it's flush at the back with the front of the receiver. Take our screw / sling swivel from the front of the sling right here. We take this big spacer. This is essentially just a big washer. Put it on there, make sure our sling isn't tangled up. Put that screw down in there and start tightening it. That part's pretty simple. While I'm doing this and finishing up, I'll go ahead and close out. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I really appreciate y'all watching, especially with all the breaks and cuts and little difficulties I was running into with this gun. I am not a professional gunsmith. I am not licensed in any way to do anything like this, and I don't do it for money. My friend is not paying me in any way for this, unless you want to consider that she bought some whiskey samplers for me and her and a couple of other friends to try out as payment, but it's not. This is just something I'm doing as a courtesy to try to help a friend out and help her not spend some money to get a gun up and running and working again so she can take it hunting. And I also enjoy it, and I'm also making content for you guys, although maybe not the best content. If you guys have suggestions on how I can do something like this better, please let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. I'd also like to hear if you have any desire to learn about any other kind of redneck gunsmithing stuff. All of this kind of stuff I've just kind of picked up and learned over the years. I'm going to move the camera because I feel dumb with you just not looking at my face. I've kind of just picked a lot of this stuff up over the years just by trial and error and having a need to attach a new part or change something out or take something apart and just figuring it out. And you know what? It's worked out pretty well for the most part. So you do learn things here and there. YouTube University is a great resource that I use a lot myself. But again, not a licensed gunsmith. This is not advice. This is just me showing you a way of how I do things. I'm hoping that by getting this gun cleaned up, which we did, in fact, I cleaned this off camera in between the disassembly video and the field strip video and the reassembly video. And yeah, it was nasty and skanky and gross. But I'm really hoping that that helps it run better when I get it out to the range. So anyway, thanks again for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Y'all take it easy, roll tide, and I'll see you later.